The most dangerous person in any frontier saloon wasn't the drunk at the bar or the gunslinger at the door. It was the woman serving the drinks. She ran a con so clean, the customers never saw it coming. Operated in a system so corrupt, the government was taking its cut, and survived in conditions so brutal that history preferred to just look away. Hollywood turned her into a prop. The real story is something else entirely. These are 20 facts about Old West saloon girls that the movies never had the nerve to tell. If you love history that actually tells the truth, subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It genuinely helps us keep making these. On number 20, we're starting with the sober strategy. And picture this: a dimly lit saloon in Dodge City, 1878. A cowboy slides a whiskey across the bar and winks at the girl beside him. She smiles, picks it up, and drinks. What he doesn't know is that he just paid 75 cents for cold tea. Saloon owners replaced every drink ordered for a girl with dyed water or cold tea poured into a shot glass. The customer paid full whiskey price. The girl stayed stone cold sober all night. And here's what nobody talks about. This wasn't just a small trick. It was official policy across hundreds of establishments. A girl who got drunk couldn't work, couldn't sell, couldn't earn. The whole warm, hazy scene you've seen in every Western? A performance, top to bottom, every single night. On number 19, the shocking wages. And here's a detail that even seasoned historians find remarkable. A successful saloon girl in the 1870s and 80s could pull in around $10 a week in base salary alone. And that's before a single commission. The crazy part? A popular girl averaging 50 dances a night, each ticket worth 75 cents to $1, could make more in one single night than a railroad worker or a ranch hand made in a full month. And in an era when the only legitimate work available to women was laundering, cooking, or teaching school for about $1.50 a week, this was life-changing money. Think about that the next time a film shows these women as helpless background characters. They were, in many cases, the highest-earning women in their entire town. That was the secret the respectable ladies across the street desperately did not want to acknowledge. On number 18, we're talking about the dance ticket economy, because the drink wasn't even the main money machine. It was the dance ticket. Here's how the whole system worked. A customer paid between 75 cents and a full $1 for a dance ticket. The proceeds were split between the girl and the house. After the dance ended, and most dances lasted about 90 seconds, the girl's job was to walk that man straight to the bar and sell him a drink, on which she also earned a commission. Then back to the floor, then back to the bar. 50 times a night, in a corset, in heeled boots, on a hardwood floor. No sick days, no overtime. Think about it. This wasn't entertainment. This was a full-contact, high-endurance sales job dressed up as fun. Modern bottle service clubs run the exact same playbook. The only difference is that at least today the girls get to wear comfortable shoes. On number 17, the painted ladies slur. And the term painted ladies sounds almost charming today, but it wasn't. In the Victorian era, it was a social weapon. A single phrase that could end a woman's reputation permanently. Here's the detail nobody talks about. In proper Victorian society, makeup on a woman was not a fashion choice. It was a public confession. Wearing rouge, tinting your lips, or, God forbid, dyeing your hair, meant exactly one thing in the eyes of polite society: that you were a woman of the lowest moral order. Respectable women were pale, plain, and proud of it. So when saloon girls arrived in town with painted faces and bright-colored hair, the community reaction was visceral. They weren't just fashion rebels. In the eyes of everyone around them, they had voluntarily branded themselves as outcasts. And most of them made that choice anyway, because the money was real and virtue wasn't paying the rent. On number 16, the fashion rebellion. And while we're talking about what they wore, let's be very clear about how genuinely shocking it was. Saloon girls wore skirts that hit at the knee or mid-shin, in an era when showing an ankle was considered borderline obscene. Their shoulders were bare, their bodices were cut low, their dresses were covered in sequins, fringe, and silk. They wore colored stockings held up by garters, which were also gifts from admirers. To every proper woman in every Western town, this was practically an act of public provocation. But here's the twist that almost never gets mentioned. These same women were, in many cases, buying their own property, opening their own bank accounts, making their own financial decisions. Decades before women had the legal right to vote, saloon girls in frontier towns were quietly practicing a form of economic independence that their supposedly more respectable counterparts couldn't even dream of. On number 15, the refuge of the displaced. And this one will change how you see every single one of the others. Most saloon girls didn't choose this life as an adventure. They chose it because there was literally no other choice. Most were refugees from farms, textile mills, or abusive households back east. Many were widows, women whose husbands had died on the frontier, leaving them with no income, no family network, and a society that offered them almost no options. They were recruited by posters and handbills promising high wages, easy work, and fine clothing. Some arrived expecting dancing and left realizing what the job actually involved. They weren't painted villains or comic book vixens. They were women in impossible situations making the only decision that kept them alive. The worst part? Most of them never had a single person in their lives who saw it that way. On number 14, the social divide. Because Hollywood collapses all these women into one category, but the actual women absolutely did not. There was a rigid and fiercely enforced social hierarchy among them. At the top were the proper saloon and dance hall girls, entertainers, saleswomen, performers. They were not prostitutes, and they were genuinely offended to be treated as such. Below them were the parlor house girls, working in higher-end establishments. And at the very bottom were the crib girls. Here's what few people know. A dance hall girl who was mistaken for a prostitute could, and frequently did, react with real fury. The distinction mattered enormously to them. It was the one line of respectability they could hold on to in a world that had taken nearly everything else. The crazy part is that polite society refused to see any difference between them at all. They were all just fallen women. End of story. On number 13, profit sharing. And let's talk about the economics from the owner's side, because this is where the exploitation really reveals itself. The saloon owner marked up his whiskey between 30 and 60% over wholesale cost. He then charged the girl for her room in the saloon, her costumes, her food, and in some cases, her makeup. On top of that, he took his cut of every dance ticket she sold. She received a percentage of every drink she convinced a man to buy, but the percentage came off an already inflated price that she had no control over. The whole system was engineered so that no matter how hard she worked, the owner was always profiting on multiple levels simultaneously. Sound familiar? That's basically the modern gig economy. The worker takes all the personal risk, performs all the labor, and the platform takes its cut from every single transaction. Some business models are apparently timeless. On number 12 is one of the most quietly sinister facts on this entire list. Forbidden love deliberately sabotaged. Saloon owners were not just indifferent to their girls falling in love. They actively worked to prevent it. If a patron was spending too long at one girl's side, buying her drinks, monopolizing her time, showing signs of genuine attachment, the owner would intervene. He would reassign the girl, limit the man's access, or outright ban extended conversation. Because here's the business reality. The single greatest threat to a saloon owner's income was marriage. A girl who got married left, and a girl who left had to be replaced, retrained, and re-promoted to the crowd. So owners managed their girls' romantic lives like inventory. They weren't running a social club, they were running a machine. and emotions were a mechanical failure risk. And nobody ever told the girls this when they signed on. On number 11, armed and dangerous. Because the image of a fragile saloon girl waiting to be rescued is one of the great lies of Western cinema. The reality? Most of them were armed. Pistols were tucked into garters, daggers were slipped into bodices, small derringers were hidden in boot tops. This wasn't bravado, it was survival math. Lawmen in the Old West operated by an unofficial but very consistent rule. Disputes involving working women were not their problem. A girl who was assaulted, robbed, or threatened inside a saloon had essentially no legal recourse whatsoever, so they handled it themselves. There are documented accounts of saloon girls drawing on men twice their size and making the point very clearly. The crazy part is that this image, the sharp, armed, self-reliant woman of the frontier, is historically far more accurate than anything John Wayne ever appeared alongside. Hollywood just never found it convenient to tell that story. On number 10, lethal consequences for disrespect. And it wasn't just the girls who enforced order. The saloon itself had its own brutal justice system. Saloon owners required, genuinely required, that customers treat the women with a baseline of respect. Not out of decency necessarily, but out of business logic. A girl who was roughed up couldn't work, couldn't sell, couldn't dance. And a saloon with a reputation for tolerating abuse of its girls lost the girls entirely. So, the consequences for serious mistreatment were severe.